Hello, I'm joined by Chloe today of Minim. Lovely to meet you.
Absolute pleasure.
Our journey begins at Time and Tide quite a number of months ago now, come to think of it.
Yeah, I did think you saying our journey is quite interesting because we are right next to the airport.
Ooh, I like that thinking there.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Today, our focus is on you. Not to make you feel uncomfortable, but especially on the brand. I'm currently wearing the watch, so no. But I want to talk a little bit more with you about the origins. Where does it start for you? Clearly there's a love for watches. I don't know the story about that, in fact, so I'd like to learn a bit about that and then maybe move into your journey about your watch because I love it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Nick, like the moment Nick got the watch, he was like, Chloe, this looks so great, can I post it? I was like, no, you can't. It's still under embargo as we speak, but I'm really glad that he likes it. And the way I've picked it is I've got 3 prototypes and they've all gone to like a different region to do like a small little circuit. And this one was like, okay, I was like, well, Nick's going to be on that circuit. So this is naturally the watch that you should, you know, be able to experience. I guess if we kind of like, you know, take a little trip down memory lane, it's really not that romantic. Like a lot of people are like, my grandpa left me this watch. Well, for my first watch that I really kind of remember is an ice watch, actually.
Okay.
Not a swatch, not a flick-flack, an ice watch. And it's this orange, it's really in-your-face kind of orange.
Okay.
And it was a special edition done for like the Dutch football team, I think in the 2010 World Cup.
Yeah,
could have
that
been
might
that.
be
And it's
feasible.
got like keepers which were like red, white, and blue. I don't actually have the watch anymore.
Okay.
But that's kind of like the earliest memory of me actually owning a watch. But the first proper watch that I got for myself was a couple of years ago. It was like my first paycheck, and I was like, I'm gonna get a really nice watch. I got a PRX, an ice blue one, the quartz one.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see, I'm kind of a fan of blue.
Yeah.
And this is why I've made this one.
Mm-hmm.
And the story about this one was that I actually prototyped quite a few different colors.
I've seen all of those colours, I think.
Yeah, and I basically said, this is the one that I'm going to make for myself and for myself only, and it's not going to be available. And I actually took that piece round and say, yeah, this is my piece unique, haha. And then everyone said, no, you have to make this one. And I succumbed to peer pressure, as anyone would. And this is going to be one of the ones part of the debut collection. And I guess to your question, why did I start the brand? And it's quite simple. I really love, I think like yourself, dress watches, especially kind of like these kind of vintage pocket watch inspired architecture type dress watches. But most of the time when you do get that kind of watch, they're like white, champagne dial, black, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it's just like, it doesn't have that kind of punchy breath of fresh air type feel to it. And a lot of times you also have a movement that might not necessarily be something that's very reliable. And I was thinking to myself, what do I want to see in a watch? And something that represents me, someone who's moved from Hong Kong, the East, and someone who's now landed in London, the West. Something that ties everything together. It both respects tradition, but at the same time gives it a sense of modernity. And this is how I created Minim and the debut collection, the Meridian. And we're obviously in London right now where the Prime Meridian is. And I just love that poetic kind of meaning of like East connects with West and kind of like that element of time. And that's how the collection was born.
What goes on in your mind before you go in, I'm actually going to make a watch? Because there's an idea of, I guess, as watch enthusiasts, we all dream about what our watch would be if we could create one. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering for you, how does it go from I really like watches to I'm going to create my own brand? That feels like a huge jump, and maybe it's my fears, but it feels like a huge jump. So I'm just wondering for you, how do you go from I've got a little idea, I'm going to sketch it out. I've seen the sketches, by the way. Mm-hmm. I was privy to that information very recently, and it actually really excited me to see where it was to where it is now and wearing it as I currently speak. How does that happen?
I actually got that WhatsApp message like 2 days ago saying, this was a year ago. And So, you know, for some people, it might have taken like a really long time. But for me, I was literally just, because I guess for some of you who don't know me, is that I just, I work in finance, and I lost my job a while ago. And I was like, you know what? I like watches. Now I actually have time to go to watches as opposed to sign up for something, then say, sorry guys, I can't come anymore. So what I did was, well, I'm going to spend time shooting watches. And I started with the watches I had. I got onto a podcast, I got onto Scotch watches. That kind of just like, basically it was like Ricky's way of like literally kicking me from the behind and just head first into the rabbit hole of micro brand watches. I do have mainstream kind of like big brands, but I've just absolutely fallen in love with the fact that, and I think same as you, like getting to know the people behind the brands, understanding their process, their designs, what motivated them, what inspired them. And where were we? But yeah, basically I started from there. I had more time. I shot watches, spent more time, you know, knowing brands, knowing the people behind them, learning about the designs, getting a bit more technical. And one of the brands that I came across was actually Pedro. Okay. So Kevin Pedro, and I was chatting with him, said, you know, like your design language is quite, you know, peculiar. It's very interesting. And from there, he basically told me, like, Chloe, I know you said you wanted to, you know, one day do your own watch. It's like, why wait for one day? There's never a good time to do something like this. It's a big undertaking, which I now know. It's like, just put pen to paper and I'll try and like help you just, you know, connect you with the right people and, you know, make that. And he even, you know, went as far as to Photoshop something. I was like, okay, I kind of want this, I kind of want that. And he like Photoshopped something, which does not look remotely close to, you know, the product on hand right now. But he was like, why are you waiting? And then I sat at home. And no, actually, I wasn't at home. I was on my way to a Red Bar Cambridge meetup. And I was on the train and I had my notebook with me and I just started drawing it. I think I might even have it. We can take it out later.
I've seen it, so we can take a little picture of that.
Yeah,
I got sent it as well recently.
Yeah,
and there was a proud moment in conversation, actually. I was talking with Sam from MIC. Hi, MIC. Hi, Sam.
Hi,
and Omar.
MIC.
And he literally sent the picture, and the message he sent was how proud he was of you. And I think that's a lot of what I get when I speak to people. We mix in similar circles, naturally, as you would do. The watch world isn't huge, but big enough for us to all fit. And I was talking with Sam and he spoke about how proud he was to seeing the sketches, to it being realised. And then I'm currently wearing one of those watches as well. So for me, I'm seeing it from beginning to end in that sense. And that's a really nice feeling to have, actually. What went on for you in terms of what you wanted from this watch? We spoke a little bit about dress watch, but in terms of design cues, inspirations, where does that come from for you?
I would say... So when I did get my sort of recent job, I got myself early 2000s Chrono Swiss regulator, and it's like the M version, which means it's not 38 millimeters, it's actually 34. Okay. And surprisingly, I really like that design language, and I love it. And I mean, they obviously do very funky things these days, but I very much admire their earlier works before there was like that change of ownership. And I was just questioning myself, but what do I want to see in this watch? And so there have been a lot of people that say, make something bigger, do this, do that. And I am nothing but open-minded, I would say, in my humble opinion. But I do take, you know, criticism or advice, or what are the things I could change, tweak here and there. And kind of from there, I basically evolved what I want in a watch to accommodate for people that have enabled me in this journey. So
how many versions do you think you went through as you were sort of going through that designing process?
That's a different, I don't even know, because when I was working with a designer, like for those who don't know me, I'm not a very technical person. So like if you speak to some other brands, like Alex at Alfa Romeo, for example, he can do a lot of the designs himself. He knows a lot of different things. For me, it's and this was a lady at Geneva Watch Days. They asked us. We were a group, and they asked us as a group. So, are you press or are you just passionate? And I was just like, that's the best way to put it, because yeah, I am just passionate, and that is how it's here and there, like elements I want to change. So I don't actually know how many iterations I have. It's not like I've got like a PDF of like V1 and then now we're like V150. Yeah. But there have been so many things that I said, oh, that looks great. And then I went back and said, actually, that doesn't look too great. Oh, can you change this? Can you change that? And I guess like even right now, we're still in a bit of an iterative process. You know, I've got the prototypes, not happy with certain things, changing them. Like, I just want the best product possible when it actually hits people's wrists and when it's like, you know, people are buying it. So yeah, like quite a lot of different iterations, I would say.
And I'm just thinking also, obviously I've spent time with it recently, lucky me. And I can see, as soon as you said Chrono Swiss, I could see that, definitely. And then I and Jason behind the camera will also attest to is I'm a huge fan of Breguet. And as soon as I see anything guilloche type work being done, I'm always going to be excited. And obviously on this watch, again, as I'm looking at it now, we've got 3 different variations of guilloche on there. CNC stamped, it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And then coming back to where we were before, this idea of East meets West. When you look at the watch, what elements do you think, oh, that takes me to my heritage, that takes me to my roots? And what elements do you go, this is the West talking, so to speak? What's that conversation like between East and West?
I would say the selection of colors, that definitely plays into it. I grew up in Hong Kong, and for me, that kind of, so the names, I think I've briefly touched on this with you, but you know, before we recorded, but like the names are all Cantonese words. So they're not, they're like Cantonese phonetic basically. Okay. So like, that's why it kind of looked like military codes, like LAAN4, but that's actually just like the way you would spell it out if you were to say it in Cantonese.
Wow.
So for purple, which is the one with the Roman numerals around it, which funnily enough, people have said, why don't you do that with the Chinese dial? But actually some colors don't work as well with the numerals. And I'm sure someone who has better sort of artistic understanding of our world will be able to explain why. But I don't. I just know that doesn't look as nice, so I'm not going to do it. But basically the names are all nature inspired. So Lan is kind of like the flower. It's well, for me the closest would be the Bauhinia flower, which is, you know, Hong Kong city flower, and most of it comes in purple, naturally, and that's kind of where those kind of elements come from. This obviously brings me back to, you know, the clean waters. Like, as much as people always think of Hong Kong as just concrete jungle, I actually grew up in the part of Hong Kong which is very there's a lot of nature around me. Like, as the house that I actually moved away from before I moved to the UK was actually roughly probably 10 meters away from the sea.
Wow, okay.
And which is horrible when it's typhoon season. And it's roughly 15 meters behind like a hiking trail. Wow, so that you nature. Can see and also, you know, mountains. And that's kind of like the blue and the lime as well.
Okay, so they're all coming together. There's a reason for each of those colors. And I know that you've gone through some other colors and had opinions of what might work, what might not work. How do you then go, this is the decision, I've stuck to it?
Well, there's obviously a peer pressure for the Tsing, which is, Tsing actually kind of means like crystal, and it's like crystal clear waters. Yeah. That's kind of where the inspiration comes from. But obviously, for me, you know, I'm a democratic person. You know, if people want something, I'll try to accommodate for it. But this is how I landed on these 3 colors.
Okay.
Purple, obviously, I love purple. Blue is my favorite color. And that's why, as much as I wanted it to be a piece unique, I've now opened it up, and, you know, if people do want to purchase it, they do want to see it on their wrist, they will be able to. And then actually, funnily enough, I know your favorite color is green.
Yeah.
So the one I have is not quite olive, even though I actually had my mind set to make it olive. It actually turned out not being olive, and I was like, I kind of wrote it off when I got it sort of in the mail. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do this. It's not what I wanted, and I'm a bit of a stubborn person like that. But when I showed it to people, they said, oh, I actually really like this. You should case it. And again, I'm very democratic. I cased it, and I that actually ended up being my favorite variant. So right now, as I said, the prototypes are out with reviewers, and the lime version of it, so Bic, is actually the furthest away from me. It's in Australia at the moment.
Wow.
And I really miss it. I genuinely really miss it. So I think I mentioned I will be going back to Hong Kong to attend a wedding, and I'll be wearing a dark green dress, much like this cap, and I'll actually be wearing that watch to go with it.
So it'll be premiering at a wedding near you soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me a little bit about the watch itself in terms of, and I know we'll do a spec of it at the end of this video. And for our audience, I guess you can tell us which ones are your favourites. It'll be great to hear from you. But in terms of dimensions, what are the main standout features if you were to talk through them?
I would say, obviously 36.5 millimeters in diameter. As much as that sounds quite small, I mean, obviously there's this whole trend of moving towards smaller watches, and that kind of is the sweet spot, and lug to lug 43.5. And I know like everyone always comes into these sort of questions with a very good like, oh, this is how it's designed and everything. Admittedly, I don't know what I've done that has actually made it sit so well on like wrists of different sizes. So obviously Nick and I have different wrist sizes. The watch wears really well on my wrist, and somehow it also works really well on your wrist. And I've got a friend, David, who's a bit of a big lad, and it looks really good on his wrist as well. Obviously the strap size has to be different, but
of course.
It somehow just sits really well. And lug width, obviously 20 millimeters, can't go wrong.
Everyone wants a strap monster.
Exactly. And it is one.
Yeah.
As much as you have very punchy colors, I've tried them on different straps and they do work. And in terms of the case height, it's 9.5 millimeters. It does optically look a bit bigger just because you have those coin edge on like the coin sandwich, that's what I call it, and then that kind of like brushed bit in the middle, so it kind of looks a bit blocky, but it's really not that tall, and I kind of don't want it to be really like thinner, obviously because it's a CNC gear shaped dial, so the dial also has a bit of thickness to it. But it's a manual wound watch, which means it keeps it relatively like nice and thin under the cuff type watch, and that's sort of like the specs of it. But you really have to wear it. Like, yeah,
I would agree. I think it's got presence. I think whether it be the colours, the thickness for me is it's a thin watch. For all intents and purposes, it's a dress watch, therefore it fits under a cuff, and you can wear it quite dailyable. I mean, it meets a lot of criteria in that sense. The design again is a dichotomy of East meets West. If we're looking at some of the colours, if we're looking at some of the styles in terms of the guillot shape patterns, you've got that coming together really, really nicely, and it's harmonious as well. It works well, it looks good. And again, when I've worn it recently, I was working. First thing a family said when they saw it was, "Oh wow, that's really cool, tell me about that." I was there to do work, so I had to explain to them that we could talk about it very briefly, but we did talk about the watch, and it was very well received. What's next for you? What are you thinking at the moment? Obviously, we're leading up. This is, if we're thinking about it in terms of release time, there's still a few weeks left to go. Mm-hmm. Are you already thinking about the next version or special versions? Is there anything that you're concocting behind the scenes?
Yeah, so funny if you mentioned that. I am thinking about it, but obviously it needs to be sort of like economically viable for me to be able to proceed to the next project. But I definitely do have I do have like inspiration for what I want to see come next, and I definitely want to like step it up on the craft end, because like one big part of Minim is the kind of homage or ode to traditional watchmaking, and to me it's the CNC gear shape part is that
traditional.
And and funny enough that you mentioned that, because we are now recording at World Time UK, and Horologium is here, which is my assembly partner for this project. And it was my actually first time seeing them in person, because we've only been interacting, and I said, I absolutely will visit the facilities, but just don't have the time right now, but I definitely want to. I really, really want to. And I was saying like, oh yeah, so in terms of us thinking about the next thing, I was like, yeah, we definitely will, but we just need to make sure that all the processes for Minim Meridian in its like debut form would be taken care of before we move to the next thing. So I definitely am thinking about it. I am talking about it. I just can't quite put pen to paper yet to do that at the moment.
And I guess it's difficult to be able to start thinking ahead when you've got, I guess, this process going on at the moment.
Exactly.
And it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time, whether it be promoting, whether it be understanding feedback and all those steps. You mentioned two things in that conversation, and I think they're very important and we need to touch on them. The name Minim, where does that come from?
So if you look at the logo, that's actually my name. So I'm from Hong Kong, so ethnically Chinese, and the last character of my name is actually the logo. So funnily enough, some people said, "Oh, it looks very much like another brand." And I said, well, I guess blame my parents because that's actually my name. So there's not really much I can change about that. I do love the fact that there's symmetry in that character.
Yeah.
So that character is Mun. And the way my mum's actually anglicized that name is M-I-N, Min. And, my brother's a professional pianist, and I've been brought up in a home with a lot of classical music influences. And to me, Minim obviously means the note. And for me, it's got that poetic sense of pause, taking time. So I just thought it's a perfect name for the brand.
How very poetic.
Yeah, and it's a palindrome, so that's also nice.
What's the thing that makes people happiest about the watch? Because there's something very unique and people notice it as we walk around. A few days we walked around with it, and people, what's that? What makes them happiest about it?
I think the color is a big part of it. I mean, we all live in the UK. It's not exactly the most colorful country when it comes to the weather and everything. And actually today's not too bad. I did wake up and I was like, oh, are you serious? It's so great. And now it's actually blued up a bit. But I would say the color, I think that's always something that catches people's eyes. And then that comes the next thing, was like, can you make something that's a bit more muted and this and that? And perhaps so, but I do think that is something I bring that's different to the table, to the conversation, which is the color. I myself love color a lot, and I know there's a lot of different watches that have been done, but I did kind of go through a pretty rigorous process into just finding these specific colors, because I feel like that speaks kind of the loudest for what Minim represents.
And then the name of this collection is Meridian. I can guess what it means, but I'd prefer to hear it from you.
Yeah, it's the east meeting west bit of it, and obviously we're in London. I live very close to Greenwich actually, and for me, the prime meridian, where almost like where time itself begins, and there's a lot of different meanings to it, but that's how I landed onto calling it the Meridian.
How are you feeling? I know we're having a conversation, I know it's something that's going to go onto YouTube, but I guess as we're talking about it, does it make the watch feel more alive that we're talking about a watch that's your watch that's coming out? What comes to mind? Where are you at the moment as we're talking?
Mixed emotions. Stress is definitely one of them. I think I've like told everyone that I'm stressed, like even if it's like my mum asking, my boss asking, my friends asking, like stressed. That's like, so I'm almost in like a perpetual state of stress for now. And I think if anything, it's a good thing, because this means I care about this project. It's to me, it's more than just putting my name out there. It's far from a profit-making project, because everyone that would tell you is like, oh, I want to start a watch brand so I can make money, and then 2 days later they're like, oh, actually the math doesn't quite math. You're actually not going to make any money out of this. And then even when you do make money, it's all going to go back to the brand. But for me, definitely, I'm excited. I'm excited to see people wear this. I want this to go into production smoothly. And that's also why I've kind of like jumped the gun a little bit in terms of production, because I want people to have it on their wrist. I don't want them to be waiting for 6 months for this to get on their wrists. I want this to be, if they hit pre-order, it will actually get to their wrist as soon as possible. So that I'm very, very excited, and I want to know how people feel when they see it on their wrist, because it genuinely is a watch that, as much as my photographer Danny shout out to Danny at DBTSANG. He's an incredible photographer. This is a watch that you have to put on your wrist to feel it. And yeah, I think stress is definitely one of them. And I think it's a good thing because that means I care about this project. And I've also mentioned this to Nick so many times. People always say like, oh, don't be humble. And it's not me being humble, but genuinely the community has played such a big part into making this project happen, from just that nudge that I needed to put pen to paper, from introducing me to, you know, good suppliers, good designers. Like, so many people have played a part, or telling me, Chloe, that is stupid, like, don't do that, or this is way too much, you're paying way too much for this, and like, oh, that person, they're going to give you crap quality. Like, there's so many people that have walked the walk, so they're telling me what to do. And like, for me, it's it is a project of love.
Yeah. And I think it summarizes what the watch community is about. Community. There's an idea here of we, you know, in being part of the community, we are constantly communicating with other people, constantly sharing that passion, constantly sharing ideas and thoughts. And when you decide to take a jump, and it's a big jump, but one that I know is going to be very successful, there's always an idea of who are the people around that are involved in that process. It's not just a me process, it's a passion of love, it's a passionate project for me, but there's also an idea of there are other people that are involved, and in sharing that with other people, the feedback you get helps, but also it's self-promotion almost, because these people care about you, and by the very nature care about the watch, because they want you to be happy, they want it to be a success for you. And I think that is what the micro brand independent world is all about, the people, and that's what makes the micro world what it is.
Yeah.
Should we leave things there?
Yeah.
Anything else you were thinking about?
Not really. I kind of, when you were asking me about it, I thought about this one thing that I did want to mention, which is, you know, like I said, my brother's a professional pianist, and for me, like, his favorite color is green, and he's like Grinch level green, or Mike Wazowski level green. And for me, I've created this dial which I've set aside, and hopefully I'll be able to case it, and when we kind of go into full production, that will be the dial that he has, which is like a very, very special green, which I know Nick has seen it and Nick wants it for himself. I said, I'm sorry, you're not my brother.
It is what it is. It is what it is. I'm understanding of that.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, Jason behind the camera.
Yeah, so just one more question in terms of what your wish for the launch and the brand is. Like, in a perfect world, what would happen?
That it works out, that it's not a colossal blob. I just want people, I just want this to be well received. I've had, you know, good praises, but at the end of the day, it has to convert into people actually wanting them on their wrists. And I hope that happens. The way I've kind of thought about the launch is that I will be dropping the images in the public domain on the 20th of October, and hopefully I will be also opening up a roughly 2-week order window from the 25th of October 2025 to 9th November, and all the orders of the Minim Meridian of the core collection, so the big LAN and thing, will all be fulfilled.
Are there specific numbers of each?
There aren't any specific numbers of each, but I'm working on something, so as much as this is going to be on camera, I'm not promising anything, but I am working on something that hopefully will only be available for those that, you know, order within that pre-order window. And they will be getting something that's different. So even though it is a core collection, it will come back again, but only for like basically the launch period. People will get that one little extra thing.
So that sounds very exciting as well. Thank you very much, Chloe. Lovely to speak with you.
Absolute
Best of luck with the watch.
Thank you.
I am expecting great things from it because I do really like it, and we will be we'll be seeing some other interesting stuff coming soon as well, I imagine too. Take care.